knows. All right. Good. We got some people trickling in. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're going to get started in just a minute. While we're getting started, if you want to drop in the chat kind of where you're from, say hello. We'll do a quick round of introductions there to see who's all here. We got 10 plus people, 18, kind of growing. So drop it in. Let's see what representation we got. We're Midwest user group, but we're pulling people from all over the place. So, all right, we got East Coast. I know we got West Coast, but we got some Midwest. This is perfect. We're covering everybody. This is awesome. How you doing, Mark? Great to see you. Demos, wonderful. We got Jonathan from Toronto. Great. We got north of the border. This is awesome. We got Greg from Maryland. Seattle from Chris. All right. Sakar from Texas. Diva. All right, Diva. Yep. And then we got Florence from SoCal. Perfect. Love it. Love it. Good representation today. Fantastic. Yep. We got our Chicago folks as well. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining. This is the AEM Assets Demystified session for the AEM user group for the Midwest chapter. Thanks again for joining. My name is Fred Faulkner. I am a partner here at ICF Next, who is the leader of this group. I'm joined today by a couple of my colleagues that you'll get to meet here in a second. Just kind of a couple of housekeeping items before we kind of get started. Again, this is all about user and community. This is not a pitch session. This is not anything else. This is about us sharing our expertise, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning. Sharing is caring. So as we go along today, while we have Raf and we have Tad, which I'll introduce here in a second, really kind of talking about AEM assets and trying to demystify all the different flavors and versions that are out there. This is a group thing, so please do ask questions along the way in the chat. I will be monitoring that as we go along. We'll have you come off mute. We're not going to wait till the end. You see something you want to jump in on, let's jump in and talk about it. I'm sure everyone's got experiences with assets in some way, shape, or form, so that's the purpose. Also, I'm going to drop some polls into the meeting today, just kind of keep things a little interactive. Just kind of, also just share knowledge and see what everyone's kind of on. And so, again, I appreciate you guys joining us today. This is our third user group meeting. We have some plans to have these roughly monthly. I want to continue to keep that trend now that we're coming out of the summer and really run into the fall. So topics will be also something we'll ask a little bit later on for future topics. If you guys want to present, if there's something you guys want to present upon, please, let's make sure we do that as well. Raise your hand. This isn't about us sharing on anything we know. This is about everyone giving a forum and a floor for this group and this community as a whole. So without further ado, I'm going to then jump into things we're going to talk about tonight. Again, we're talking about some quick introductions. I'll introduce Raf and Tad, let them introduce themselves. We're going to walk through a bunch of aspects of AEM assets, and these are the different flavors and stuff that we're going to kind of talk through. Again, questions along the way, and we'll just get to some Q&A and topics for next meeting. So pretty easy agenda, roughly about an hour. Hopefully we'll stay on as long as we need to, but the purpose of this is, again, just like demystify this complicated tool, not because it's complicated, but because it is a lot of flavors of it, called AEM assets. So I'll let them both introduce themselves, but today we have Tad Reeves and Ralph Winterpock. So Tad, why don't you give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. So I'm Tad Reeves. I'm out of Lookout Mountain, Georgia, which is just south of Chattanooga. We moved here about 3 months ago from Portland, Oregon, where we lived for quite some time. That's why you see a little construction work here happening. We just we're putting in some hickory floors and lots of nailing going on when I'm not on camera. But so my background is in AEM infrastructure. I've been doing this for about 12 years now. And so I've done managed hosting and cloud, not cloud, on-prem. I've done basically if it runs x86, I put AEM on it, and so that's my background here, and I happen to really like AEM assets.
All right, Ross.
Hey everyone, I am Ralph Winterpock. I am based at the Chicago office, and I'm sitting at our front desk. As a matter of fact, we've done a return to office and making use of the space here. But anyway, I've been working with AEM since the 5.4 version. So we're talking well over 10, 11, maybe close to 12 years now. Got a number of certifications there too. Been working with various industries and implementing AEM. A lot of them have been pretty interesting. It's really interesting too to see how Adobe is focusing on a lot of their cloud services now as well. So that's what we're going to talk about. So again, if anybody has any questions along the way, as Fred mentioned, please do bring those up as we kind of come across those topics.
Awesome. All right. Before we jump in, we're going to drop in our first poll. So first one is that you all see in the chat area. Are you currently using AEM Assets Cloud Service? Are you on it now? This is one flavor, but the Assets Cloud Service being the most latest and greatest. So curious on everyone's got that. Curious on everyone's kind of what you're running. So got some planning to move soon, some no's. They're growing on the yes. We are on Assets Cloud Service, which is great because I think that it's got a lot of awesome integrations and stuff you could do. We've talked about some of those Creative Cloud integrations and stuff in the past. Let that kind of run for a bit. All right, Ralph, you're going to kick us off with a little bit of what is assets and how does all kind of work.
Yep. So AEM Assets, it's really Adobe's DAM, right? So it's their digital asset management offering. So when we look at this slide, you see a number of different things here. So let me just explain things kind of from the left to right. So AEM Assets is part of Adobe Experience Manager. It has its own set of features and functionality, and typically assets will run alongside something like sites. So it'll have the images that serve web pages, images, and various media that are to be displayed on websites, right? It can also be alongside forms. It can also serve as showing additional kinds of media for what's running on Adobe Commerce. It can also be used for having assets that you see sometimes in campaigns or things like journey orchestration. Really, it's intended to be more of like an omni-channel delivery mechanism. There's a number of different flavors of AEM assets too, so that's kind of what we're going to talk about here too. There's a lot of different flavors of it. Even AEM assets itself can exist in a number of different ways, right? So you may have heard things like AEM 6.5, right? So that's the latest sort of on-premise version of AEM assets. It can also exist with or exist as AEM 6.4. It could be something that's either on a cloud-based system, like it can be on Azure or AWS. It can also be on Adobe Managed Services, right? Or it can be purely AEM as a cloud service. So it can be on AEM on AEM's new cloud offering. Hey, Fred, I think we've skipped to the next slide. We should be on the previous still.
All right.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. So there's a couple of different pieces to assets as well, right? So assets in the AEM world can also contain content fragments. So if you're trying to deliver AEM in a headless kind of way, then a lot of times you can have that put into this particular kind of asset called a content fragment, and that content fragment can then be rendered in various different ways with GraphQL endpoints, for example. It can also, of course, handle your typical kinds of media. So all different kinds of file types are supported, things like images. You can bring documents up, and it'll even be smart enough to look at something like a PDF file that will make that all that text that's within a PDF file searchable. It'll extract tags out of it. It'll do all kinds of different processing on the assets that are brought in there. It also has this whole concept of collections. So you can have collections, which are basically groupings of different kinds of content in AEM. And of course, there's also the tagging and metadata. So tagging and metadata lets you tag the content with certain properties so that you can have them be more searchable and make it easier from an authoring perspective to find different kinds of content. And there's another part to that too when it comes to tagging and metadata, which is really a neat feature of AEM assets now, which is that there's what's called Adobe Sensei, and with Adobe Sensei, it lets you use the AI capabilities where it will do things like use AI in order to do things like tag the data so that you don't have to do it manually. So there's a lot of nice new features in AEM assets that are made available to us. So that's AEM assets. There's a number of different pieces to it too. So Fred, can we go to the next slide and I'll just talk through
real
some
quick,
of those.
just to be clear,
Yep.
There's a question that came in from Mark. Headless means channel agnostic, question mark?
Yeah, right. So you can have any different channels that are consuming the data from AEM assets. Yeah.
All right, got it. Excellent. All right.
Cool. Yes. And again, I love the questions coming in. That's the way I'd like to see it. Okay. So again, some of the different terms you may have heard, AEM. There's AEM 6.4. Like I said, there's AEM 6.5 assets, right? AEM is a cloud service assets. There are a lot of different flavors, as I said, and we're going to go through each of those just from a high level through this presentation, and then we'll go through some of the sort of key features and functionality and things that you want to look for in something like a DAM when we get to the demo part of it. So some of the different add-ons that are also included as part of AEM assets is that you get this creative cloud, you can do this creative cloud integration. So what that means is that you can have people who are using things like Photoshop or using things like Illustrator or some of the different creative cloud types of applications, and you can have AEM brought in and you can work with content that's within AEM kind of directly. There's also a content automation offering that they have as well. So the content automation offering is really kind of cool. I'm going to show you that too when we get to the demo part of this. But basically what you can do is you can have things like Lightroom filters automatically applied on content, on images that are brought into AEM. And it uses this microprocessing services where they will then do the work that typically would be done in Lightroom or Photoshop. So as opposed to having somebody doing those operations on something like Photoshop or Lightroom on a desktop, you can actually have those running in the cloud. So that offloads a lot of that data, a lot of that processing power off into that world, so that you don't have to have individuals do it. So that's a pretty nice way of working with assets as well. And there's dynamic media support. So these are all different kinds of renderings that you can do. You can work with 3D objects. So there's a lot of dynamic media and a couple of different versions of that too. And I'll go over those just from a high level. 3D support as well. There's a lot of support for things like translation. There's metadata schemas. Metadata schemas you can think of as sort of a blueprint of the metadata. So for example, you can have content that gets brought into AEM assets, and you have something like your own set of different attributes that you want to have applied. So you can have those kinds of attributes set on there too with these schemas. You can do all kinds of customizations that are there too. You can even make customizations to things like image files versus video files versus other kinds of content. So it's really a very extensive support for different kinds of media. There's also a whole part, when we talk about governance. So it's pretty elaborate when it comes to things like managing users and groups and permissions. So AEM Assets does give you all kinds of capabilities where you can lock things down, you can open things up, you can even have a way where you can provide a way to content authors to source them a certain way. They don't even have to go into the web interface. They can do it through different tools. There's a lot of different ways that you can manage those user groups and things that people are allowed to do. It does come with some out-of-the-box reporting as well. So if you wanted to do something like look at how large your DAM is in a particular folder, you can get reports like that as well. There's also ways of bulk importing and a lot more features. So with some of the things like the bulk importing, Tad's going to go into a little bit more detail about how you actually ingest content, because depending on where you're at with part of your journey of having AEM assets or even AEM as a cloud service, you've probably seen that there are a number of ways that you can get content there, right? You might be migrating from a different system, or maybe you're going from AEM 6.5 to AEM as a cloud service. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get content into AEM. We actually found really good luck with using AEM Desktop. So the AEM Desktop tool lets you upload content pretty quickly, where typically that would do something like kill an authoring instance. That really doesn't happen anymore with the sort of latest and greatest tools that are made available. So that's AEM assets. Again, if people have questions about AEM assets specifically, then we can go through those. If not, we can go to the next one.
Well, I'm going to throw a poll in here because you just talked about the different versions. So here's poll number 1, or poll number 2, I guess you could say. Because we do have some time at the end. We want to kind of think about how we can demo some stuff, get in maybe into the weeds with some things. So to give us a little more focus, quick poll, if we had some time at the end to drop a little bit of a demo, get into the tools, we have access to a lot of these things. Where do you want to go? Where do you want us to kind of dive into so we can dive into a little more deeper in any one of these things? So we make no promises we're going to get to everything, but let's take a quick poll. Where you think we can spend some time if we had an opportunity to? Give everyone a minute here to kind of answer. All right. Well, now everything's changing around. Got a little bit of everything here. We got about 30 people on the phone, got 23 responses so far. All right, I'm gonna leave this up. All right. Okay, if you guys want to spend another 30 seconds, answering that, I'm going to move Raph along here. All right.
Yeah, I'll start with that one in just a second. We'll give people another minute to answer.
All right, I think we got all the responses we're going to get. Sounds good.
Okay, great. So we're just looking at a screenshot of AEM Assets. So that right there is actually AEM Assets, AEM and Cloud Service. So like I said, it has a lot of your, your DAM kinds of features that you really want to see in a DAM, right? It supports all different kinds of file types. It supports working with a lot of different governance kinds of things. So working with various personas, things like allowing agencies to work in certain areas. It works with pretty large file types as well. It lets you get the content there relatively quickly. It has full support for various metadata attributes. It also lets you make use of Sensei, which is again the AI part of AEM Assets as well. So it's pretty extensive. There's a lot of different ways that you can view the data there as well. I'll show you some of those features as well. So I think we can go to the next slide and talk about some of the other flavors of the sort of non-AEM assets specifically. So this is Experience Cloud Assets. So Experience Cloud Assets is actually a little bit different. This is purely a cloud-based experience. So it's not something that you can have like on premise or something that you can install on a local machine. So this is part of Experience Cloud. It's a little bit more simplified version of AEM Assets. And typically what happens with AEM Assets is it's meant to be used with things like Adobe Target or AdCloud or even Adobe Campaign. There's really very minimal editing kinds of capabilities here. So generally you can view the content, you can move content around, you can upload some content, but the typical use case for something like this is to be used for the Adobe applications mentioned, or you can also use it for, just a quick repository where you needed to share something. So most of the AEM Assets features also allow you to share the content, but generally it's something where you expect finished content to come to Experience Cloud, and it's meant to be used for other channels. So that's Experience Cloud Assets. So just to sort of demystify that a little bit.
As a note there, behind the scenes, Experience Cloud Assets is basically a full AEM Assets guts, but what you're allowed to do is much more limited, and just for those use cases.
Okay, so AEM Assets Essentials. So that's sort of a newer offering from Adobe. And AEM Assets Essentials, it does have a couple of nice features. And you can see from the screenshot there, there's a pretty simplified view of assets. But it basically lives in a couple of different flavors. It can either be standalone, and again, it is cloud-based. It can be standalone, or it can be part of another offering that's part of part of Adobe's offering. So it can be integrated as part of Creative Cloud. It can be part of Adobe Workfront, or it can also be used as part of Adobe Journey Optimizer, or AJO, as you might have heard as well. So if you're provisioned for using AEM Assets Essentials, you do get the web-based version, and you can see that there's, again, a pretty simplified interface. You can still work with things like schemas. You can still work with things like collections. You can delete some content. What I do like about AEM Essentials actually is that it comes with Photoshop Express. So that's a really nice editor. So it's actually above what I've seen in things like AEM Assets as a cloud service or Experience Cloud Assets, where you have a lot of Photoshop kinds of capabilities on those assets to make modifications to the assets that are there. So I thought that was a pretty nice offering there as well. Okay, so we can go to the next one. So Brand Portal. Brand Portal is an interesting one too. So Brand Portal will typically be used with an environment of AEM as a cloud service, but it can also be used, I believe, with something like AEM 6.5. But the idea behind AEM Brand Portal is that you're publishing content out, and then that content can be used by other either agencies or other groups. It has a simplified set of users and groups that are in there too. So it has like an editor, it has a viewer, it has an administrator. So pretty simple as far as what's happening behind the scenes there. It's again also a cloud-only based system. It's also it also supports collections, so you can also work with that, but you can't upload content into it unless there was a processing folder specifically created so that you can do what's called asset sourcing. So in Brand Portal, you can set up a folder where something like an agency could bring content into a Brand Portal, and then what you can do is you can have that content brought back into AEM Assets, and then it could be going through certain workflows or whatever needs to happen there, and then it can be published back out as approved content, for example. So that's a way that you would use Brand Portal. So again, it's really intended more for completed content that's ready to be shared. And we'll show you a quick walkthrough of Brand Portal as well. Okay, so AEM Asset Share Commons. So this is actually a pretty interesting offering as well. It's actually an open source framework. So this is something that will be used if you don't want to have something like Brand Portal provisioned. What you can do is you can have Assets Commons then used either hosted, or you can have it on premise. But it's basically a project, and it's built off of an archetype. And you can have assets then made available in this sort of shopping experience. So somebody can browse a site and and they can view different content, they can filter on it, they can search on various attributes. And then what you can do is you can take your assets that you're interested in, and you can sort of add them to a cart, and then you can download those all at once. So it's, again, intended to be used as a sharing method. So it's a way that you can provide all your assets so that they can be viewed externally, and then again, they can be consumed by whoever's on the site. Okay, so I think we can go to the next one. Okay, so this is just talking about some of the integrations and add-ons that AEM has associated with AEM Assets. So there's Dynamic Media Classic. So we talked about some of the dynamic media features, which is really more around things like working with 3D assets and different kinds of rendering that you can do, different kinds of treatments on media. So that's really what dynamic media is. So it can work with an add-on to AEM Assets, or you also have Dynamic Media Classic, which is a little bit more of a standalone offering. There's content automation that I had mentioned too. So that's something that can be added to your implementation of AEM as a cloud service. That's where you get those Photoshop and Lightroom features brought into AEM. There's also a way that you can integrate with Workfront. So with Workfront, what happens there is that you can have a whole workflow. If you're managing assets in Workfront, then you can have folders sort of mapped together. And then once something is completed in a particular workflow, like it's been approved, for example, and gone through a number of different iterations, then that can be brought into AEM Assets, meaning that it's a completed asset that can be then published to web or published to whatever channel needs to consume it. We also mentioned Adobe Asset Link, so that's where you can integrate with some of the other Creative Cloud applications like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. There's also the AEM Desktop tool, which is really neat. So that's a sort of a standalone application that can run in either Windows or it can run on a Mac. And you would then sign into an AEM instance, and then you can work with things like uploading entire folder structures into AEM. So that's one of the nice ways that you can also ingest content into AEM with that desktop tool. You can also do things like check out assets and make sure that nobody else is working on them. You can do some other editing capabilities in the desktop tool as well. So it's really more of a mapping tool between your desktop and AEM. And then you can also integrate with Adobe Stock. So you can browse Adobe Stock photographs and bring those into AEM as well. So that's a list of their integrations and add-ons. We can go to the next slide, which I think we're going to talk about different ways of ingesting.
So before we jump into adjusting, because let's face it, repositories get big, I got to pull one more. I got actually two more. One more. All right, let's talk about how big is your asset repository. Everyone here likely has AEM assets in some way, shape, or form. Let's show us how big of an asset repository you have, because when we're talking about ingestion, things can get pretty crazy pretty quickly, as Tad is going to talk about. But let's where are we at? Who's got some big repositories here? Where are we standing? Less than 100 gig. We got somewhere around the terabytes. 100 gig. We got somewhere around the terabytes. We got somewhere around the 100 gig. We got somewhere around the terabytes. 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 We got somewhere around the tera All right, receiving 1 to 5 terabytes seems to be, or we got some smaller ones, less than 100 gig.
Well, maybe one.
You
Maybe
and the
one.
big boys.
Maybe one question too is: do people know how many gigs or terabytes are in their repository?
So we should have put a full answer there for I have no idea.
Yeah, that's true. I probably that is true. That might be why this one has less responses than the rest of them. Take a wild guess. Yeah, so we'll take guesstimates, Mark. Don't worry. When they're not being held accountable, it's not like we're going to go show a sales team what your repository should be.
Not the Adobe license police.
Yeah, definitely not the Adobe license police. That's for that is for sure. All right, Tad, why don't you jump into ingestion and migration, because this is one of your
sure
thoughts.
So on AEM assets, I want to take a step back just for a second before I talk about getting assets into the cloud service, just to talk a little bit about where assets has been and where it is now, because anybody who's implemented AEM on anything before the cloud service, there's a lot of features that have been part of the tool actually for quite some time that only now can you really use in the way that they're originally intended. As a point of fact, so you take the AEM desktop tool as an example. AEM desktop tool came out around AEM 6.2. And for a little story here, there's a big company, there's a big semiconductor manufacturer that I was doing infrastructure for. They said, oh my gosh, 6.2 with this desktop app, it's going to be great. We're going to give it to all our creative guys. They promptly, almost irrecoverably crashed their author with trying to use the AEM desktop tool that had come out, because in behind the scenes, AEM author is just a computer. It's just one machine, and a lot of times that machine has barely more guts than the designers who are trying to put the things into it. So if you go and you start throwing assets at it left, right, and center, it's going to drop dead. So the major strength now with the cloud service in that when you send assets into AEM and you interact with assets in AEM, it's not all just being done on one computer at this point. It's a whole complex auto-scaling web of machines, and your uploads are now, instead of just going directly to one of those machines, they're going straight into a content delivery network. Microservices pick up those files out of the content delivery network, process them, and then throw metadata into AEM. So it's a service that's now designed for massive scale. It's designed for the way that folks always wanted to use it. They wanted a lot of designers that I've talked to. They want to be able to use it kind of like a big multifunctional Google Drive, where you can just go and you don't have to think about is this asset too big to stick in it. You can just, as long as you know you've got around enough space, you just start throwing things in there. And at this point, AEM Assets Cloud Service is wonderful and how well it can take that. So depending on what you are trying to do, there's a lot of different ways of getting that data in there. And it's not just for migrations, it's also for your day-to-day use. So you've got an AEM desktop app, which is great because as Raph said, you can do multiple folders. It allows you to do very large files. We have uploaded files that were upwards of 12 gigs a piece via the AEM desktop app. The AEM desktop app is very fast, and I've sustained over 500 megabit just off of a regular desktop PC using the desktop app into a cloud service AEM install. So it's definitely got its uses. It can be a little finicky sometimes on Windows, at least. But it's a great addition. Web upload is fabulous. You can script your ingest into AEM with the AEM REST API. There is an AEM content transfer tool, which is specifically if you're doing a migration from an on-premise or a self-hosted AEM environment. It can go and it can be scripted or programmed to take certain folders in from your old AEM instance and pull them straight into the AEM cloud service. There's a bulk upload service, which is if you've got a very big AEM assets installation, the bulk upload service is really far and away the fastest way to ingest massive amounts of data. Just as another example, there's one assets installation that I did that it was around 10T, something like that. Every time we went and tried to go and get it in, this is into an old AEM 6.4 installation, this would take all weekend to basically go and do the test, to go and run everything, and even as a dry run. That same thing with the bulk upload service could be done in a matter of something like 20 minutes. Because it basically takes directly out of an Azure blob store with CSV metadata and just goes and puts it directly into Azure blob store for behind the scenes for AEM. So for mass migrations into the cloud service, it's extremely fast. And then as Raph mentioned too, you've got your asset link, which at this point, with the scale that's capable with the cloud service, you can actually use it as it was designed to be used, where you've got multiple designers or you've got video editors. Let's just say you have everybody working in Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is notorious for massive 4K, HDR videos and so forth, where you're dealing with, gigs at a time at everybody's desktop and multiple people working on a same project at the same time. So you got big files coming in and out. Now that Asset Link allows you to go and interact with those files directly within the Creative Cloud application. So you can go and maybe even have a Workfront integration where you say, oh, the workflow comes in from Workfront and says, hey, you need to make these edits on this big file. You check it out of AEM, make your edits, check it back in as a final done. And so that's yet another way of interacting. So. And there's probably more that I didn't even touch on here. But any questions there?
Maybe not so much a question, but really more of a comment. One of the things that we learned about working with AEM Desktop is that there are some limitations. Like it's a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say flaky, but sometimes you might see it crashing, and why
it
is
is kind of flaky sometimes, yeah.
So you have to dig into some of the log files, and one of the things that I found was that you can't upload more than 1,000 files at a time. So when you're uploading a folder structure, and that folder structure has really deep nested paths in it, really long file names, that kind of thing, then sometimes it might have a problem with that. Like I said, if there's more than 1,000 files, or if that path name is really, really long, it can sometimes cause problems there too. So just something to be aware of. Got some sort of tips and tricks around that, but yeah, something to be aware of.
Another one, just in case you ever run into it, just so as a note. So AEM will allow you to store zip files as an asset. So let's just say you have something like Keynote. Keynote likes to create a big HTML tree of hundreds and sometimes thousands of files that are all part of a big presentation with PDFs and JavaScript, all a part of this bundle. You can go and zip that up. AEM will actually index the file names that are in there. It won't explode it and then go and individually open up PDF files, but it will at least explode it enough to be able to get a list of the files that are in there. When you upload a zip, uploading zips can only be done via the web upload. If you try to upload via the desktop app, it'll error out.
All right, I'm going to throw one more poll up, and this is an open-ended question because I think it's going to fuel for the second part of our time here and some of the discussion before we get into the different flavors and some of the next tables we have. So I'm going to launch this, and I think this is probably one I should have launched earlier, but I didn't. But this is more open-ended for you guys. So what is your biggest challenge about AEM assets? I want to kind of get a list. We're going to use that as a discussion topic for the second half of this, and then maybe lead into how you might solve a problem in one of the demos and one of the solutions. So yeah, share your thoughts. If you could do it, give us some ideas. What's your biggest challenge that you might have? Okay, adoption, cool. Subfolders, adoption, video files, marketing file collections. All right, good. You got a couple more. Anyone else? I'm gonna keep this open. I'm not gonna close this poll right away. I'm gonna let Raph and Tad continue to talk through this stuff. But I want to keep this. Give us some ideas. We're gonna start to try and address these in the second part. So poll's gonna stay open for a little bit. +1. I think you can plus any of these as a word cloud. So if you want to bulk something up, like just as a similar, yep, I got the same problem. Just go ahead and click it. If you don't see something you haven't seen, add it into the mix. All right, guys, we're gonna let you talk about this fun table you guys have started to put together.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to put together sort of a feature matrix with all of the different flavors of assets sort of listed out in columns, right? This is by no means an extensive list. We have, 2 slides here too, by the way. So this table is split up into 2. Again, it's not an extensive list. We didn't list every single feature, obviously. But just wanted to sort of pick out the ones that I thought were, were a little bit more sort of important or something that people would look for a little bit more. So for example, Cloudbase. So is the particular offering Cloudbase? Yes, they all are. Technically, the one exception is 6.5, which you can have on premise. And you can, also have it based on something like AWS or Azure, but then, you would be doing the management of that. So still supports cloud-based implementations. Some of them are cloud only. So for example, AEM is a cloud service. That's cloud only, as is Experience Cloud, as is AEM Essentials, as far as I know, and Brand Portal. With smart tagging, so smart tagging, it is sort of an out-of-the-box feature that's available with AEM as a cloud service assets. With AEM 6.5, it's supported with what's called a smart content service. So there's a little bit of configuration and setup that you have to do in order for that to work. I did not see it in Experience Cloud assets, so I uploaded some content there just to see, does smart tags come as part of that? It did not. AEM Essentials did have smart tagging that was automatically set on the assets that we uploaded. Brand Portal, I say no because you don't really generally bring content into Brand Portal, but what I still would need to explore a little bit more is that if I had AEM as a cloud service, an asset that did get smart tagged, and then if I publish that to Brand Portal, do those smart tags come along with it? So you can kind of look at it that way, that it's supported, but not necessarily where smart tagging is part of Brand Portal. Okay. Just a quick look at the AEM desktop support. So a tool that we were just talking about with ingesting that Ted had mentioned. So it's supported obviously with assets in AEM 6.5, and a pretty useful tool if you're ingesting a lot of content. There's something that's relatively new that we had learned about too just last month, is a web optimized image delivery. So there is a component, and this is only as per the documentation, this is only available in AEM as a cloud service, but when you have a web optimized image component, there's an image component, which is a core component. That's one of the sort of core components as part of AEM. When you have an image component, it actually lets you use automatically the optimization that's part of dynamic media, and it lets you use web optimized files, or their WebP files. So it's a new offering that's recently been made available. I would demo that if I had it, but we don't. So it's something to just, keep an eye out for. So if you're doing a lot of work with different things like trying to get specific renditions or that kind of thing, then you can probably look at that web optimized image delivery if you're on AEM as a cloud service. Content automation I mentioned too, that's also a AEM as a cloud service only feature. Dynamic media is available to assets in the AEM as a cloud service as well as 6.5. Microservices processing, so this is really more about sort of the difference between AEM as a cloud service when you're ingesting an asset on cloud service versus something like AEM 6.5 where it's running on an author. So basically what happens is that all that processing work gets offloaded into these microservices. That's what happens when you work with AEM as a cloud service, and that's part of ingesting the data, right? So that's all done in cloud. Same thing happens when you're working with the Experience Cloud assets in AEM Essentials, but that's just the cloud-based processing that happens where it extracts things like the metadata, sets it back in the file, it creates all the different renditions as defined for processing profiles. So that's the microservices processing. We can go to the next slide and talk about some of the other features. So folder upload. So this is something that I think is a limitation from an authoring perspective when you're doing it via web, right? So when you're in the web version or the browser interface with AEM assets, you can only upload files, right? You can't really upload a folder and then it won't upload everything that's underneath it. You can in AEM Essentials actually, but you can't do it in AEM assets or 6.5 assets. Otherwise, you're just doing sort of flat, selecting one or more files from a specific directory and bringing that into a directory that you're in. The desktop tool, however, does let you upload entire folder structures, which is kind of nice. The next thing too we wanted to talk about was image editing. So once you get a file into AEM, what kind of editing can you do on that, right? So it's pretty basic editing that you can do when you bring it into AEM as a cloud service assets, or if it's AEM 6.5 assets. But the editing that comes with AEM Essentials I thought was pretty neat. There's actually a Photoshop Express, so it gives you a lot more Photoshop kinds of capabilities and features that you can work with. In Brand Portal, you can't do any editing, so everything comes in as read-only when you're working with Brand Portal. Okay, so the basic editing also is just a really basic kinds of editing. So you can do like flip, rotate. I think you can crop it. You could do a manual cropping there too. So pretty simple. Then there's also asset sharing. So when you have an asset, can I share it from AEM as a cloud service assets? Yes, you can do that. So there's ways to do it in most of the assets offerings. In Experience Cloud Assets, you can do it as a card, which is a little bit different than the rest of them. So it doesn't actually send an email notification or anything like that, but it's just a different kind of offering. An Adobe Asset Link. So this is the tool where can you work with something like some of the other Creative Cloud applications, so Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. So it lets you work with those as well. Okay. Okay, so that's the feature matrix.
All right, I got a couple questions for you, Raph. So
yeah.
A couple of these came in as we were going. Hopefully my dog will stay quiet. First question, so how would you tag the files in a zip folder? Mark,
I don't think
Mark brought that up.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's not possible. I mean, you can bring in a zip, and then you could add tags. So if you want, like, let's just say the inside the zip file, it was the presentation from the shareholders conference 2021 or something like that. You could add a tag, add that tag to the zip file so that it could be found by searching for that. But if you had a zip file and it had a whole bunch of JPEGs, and the JPEGs inside were a picture of a pool, a picture of a building, a picture of you'll only find pool, building, or let's say you had a picture of, Singapore, Beijing, something like that. You're only going to find it in search if the name that you're searching for is in the title, in the file name that you had inside the zip file. Otherwise, there's not a way to be able to tag that.
Yep.
Okay, second question from Florence is, why wouldn't you use Brand Portal for ingesting files?
You can use Brand Portal for ingesting files if a folder has been set up to do it that way. So there's a couple of things there. First of all, the user would have to be set up on Brand Portal, so the user would have to be provisioned, and then you can have that content be brought back. So it is a way to do it, absolutely.
Okay. Last one from Tom. Are all the Ys featured on our chart here, included with AEM as a cloud service, or are some of them paid add-ons?
Some of them are paid add-ons. So no, they're not all included.
Like dynamic media, as an example, would be a paid add-on. You would have to have a separate license for that. And there's a number of features that come with dynamic media that unfortunately sometimes are advertised as a part of the AEM Assets product. Let's say you wanted to do something really nice, like video smart crop, as an example, that's used, that Assets gets used for a lot, where somebody has that as a source of truth for all of their social media channels. So you upload a video file and you want it 16:9 cropped for Facebook, and you want it square cropped for Instagram, and you want it this cropped for TikTok or whatever like that. And doing all those video smart crops, that's all happening in dynamic media, which is going to be a paid add-on.
Yeah. Also, that content automation is another add-on that needs to be provisioned for you, so that doesn't come out of the box either. But it's a neat one.
All right, that answers questions. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the elements of our content. So I'm going to jump over to the biggest challenge kind of questions here. Let's tackle some of those, and if you want to answer some of them as part of getting into some of the demos, we can go that route. So we got a couple. Let's see if I can kind of put this up. Nope. So all right, so we got a lot of different things here. I'm going to go with the biggest ones first, and then we can kind of see how we get into this a little bit further. So integration seems to be a big one. So let's talk about other integrations that you have around assets and how that kind of works. Is there anything specific around integrations? You guys can unmute yourself and jump in if that was one of yours. But Yeah, let's start with that. If you had integration as one of your biggest challenges, why don't you unmute yourself? We'll kind of go one at a time, and we can try and ask the question a little more fully. All right, Ronnie, you're up. Great, raise hands. Love it. Yes, let's use that. So, Ronnie, you're up.
All right. I've got a couple of my other colleagues here too, so I'll invite them to join in where needed. But our integration, we are trying to basically tie into SAP Marketing Cloud. SAP Marketing Cloud was employed or adopted by the company before we got into using AEM. But now we're on the path of building our AEM assets and soon our AEM sites. How do we connect into, or is there, I shouldn't say how, I should say, is there any, have you seen any examples of how these two complicated systems come together?
I can't say that I've seen SAP Marketing Cloud integrate with AEM, not that one specifically, but I have seen other DAMs integrate with something like AEM. So for example, a Primo, that one has an integration. It actually has a specific connector that you can use to go between AEM and a Primo. So content that's managed in a Primo, because what you want to do is you want to have a single source of truth, right? And
exactly.
And a lot of right, and a lot of times what happens then is you have that content that's managed in that single source of truth, whatever system that is, and then you have it synced out, or you can have it pulled in as necessary for something like web use or e-commerce or whatever the use case might be. But again, that SAP one I haven't seen specifically. Tad, have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Okay, thanks.
That would take a little digging.
Yeah.
But if there's, but those are pretty big systems though too. So I imagine that they would probably have some APIs that you can use that can do things like syncing. Maybe you're looking for one-way syncing, which is a little bit more straightforward than something like a two-way sync that you would want to do.
Yeah, I think that's what we're really needing is the assets to be hosted in assets, the execution through SAP Marketing Cloud, whether it's, campaign, whatever activity that is with campaigns. So that's really, you would think it would be obvious, but it's been kind of something we've been trying to chase down. So, but thanks. Just curious to see if you guys had ever seen that.
Hey, it's Jonathan. I just actually want to add on to it. So we don't use SAP Marketing Cloud, but we've actually done a similar integration between our AEM assets and Salesforce Marketing Cloud, where within Salesforce Marketing Cloud, we allow the content authors that are working on email campaigns to select assets directly from AEM, and then those
sounds like
the asset
our use
URLs
case.
are embedded right into it. I can I'll DM you. I can send you my my email, and happy to share sort of the approach that we did to take that on.
Please,
it's actually
do. I think that would be valuable. Thanks. That would help a lot. Thanks. That might lead into the question that I actually posted in the chat.
All right. So anyone have any other integration related questions? If not, I'm going to move into remove tags. That had another 3 kind of thumbs up on. So who had a remove tags related question? If you want to raise your hand and jump in.
Was that and I guess the question there too is that more of like are you looking to remove it like in bulk or something else?
Yeah, that is a great question. All it says is remove tags. So I don't know who threw that one in there and wanted to plus up. So
because remove tags, I mean, I'll show you just kind of how you do that. So we have this folder set up here. I've got some content here. So there's a bunch of content that I've already ingested into this folder in our sandbox, right? And it's already done things like establish some tags on it. So what you can do here is you can select it. And then there is this little drop down here. There's manage tags. Okay. So these are the smart tags that are put on here, as well as the tags that I may have put on here, either from a metadata schema or if I manually put that on this particular asset, right? So, there's a little X by them, and so you can just remove those as necessary. I can remove, all of them, or, whatever you have to do. I can reset it so that, it doesn't, it sort of undoes that change. So, that's a way that you can kind of work with tags. If the question is because there's so many tags on here that you needed to remove them in bulk, I'm not aware of a way that you can do it in the UI, but there's probably other ways that you can do it with updating the content via something like a script. So that's certainly a possibility as well. But again, this is just how you kind of get rid of some of these tags here.
I was going to say that the bean is not a church.
Right. No, it's not. Okay. So do we want to go any more about tags, or?
I'm muted here. So yeah, if you have a question about tagging, let's throw your hand up. Let's make sure we answer the question. All right, Chris.
Hi there. So what happens if you select multiple images to try to remove tags?
Okay, so it's interesting that you say that too, because with multiple images, you can look at the properties and you can tag them all at once, right? But you can't remove the tag. So that's just not something that you can do here. So I've made some customization. So here, what I can do is I can add the tags to it, but that's something that's like, I can almost see how that would be a good enhancement. I don't know if they would call it a bug necessarily, but to me, it kind of looks like that. So let me just see if I can find some good ones. So now I'm going to tag these with that, right? Say save and close. So that's going to tag the assets that I had selected. First three, I think it is. Okay, so now if I select those again and look at the properties, see how it doesn't let me remove those tags. So I'm thinking that's something that you're after. Is that the idea? Because to me, it looks like you have to do it individually.
Yeah, we run into that.
Yeah. Yeah, so checkbox it, and here I can remove them. And it's interesting because in the properties view, when you're looking at it from a bulk perspective, you can't remove the smart tags. That you have to do through the manage tags. But I can do this, and then I check that, and then you can work with them individually. So there's not really a way to do it in bulk, but you can do it at least, by selecting them, and you can just go through each one. That saves you a little bit from having to, open up the properties for each one, save and close, open up properties, save and close, and so on. So hopefully that at least gives a little bit of a, saver there.
Thanks.
Mark, you're up.
Yeah, so in the same vein about tags, so we assign multiple tags just even to one asset. And so at least in the configuration that we're set up on, which is 6.5, we have to go through and add these tags individually. And I don't know if you just went over that, Rolf, but it's really cumbersome we add one tag, save it, and then go back in, add another tag, save it. And sometimes we have up to 5 tags at one time that we want to assign to any one asset. So is that something that that Adobe is working on improving? That is, having the ability to add all tags at one time rather than having to do it individually?
You should absolutely be able to do that. I'm surprised that you can't. So this is AEM as a cloud service, so I don't think it should be that much different from AEM 6.5. But
I've got a 6.5.13 instance on my Linux machine right here. Let me fire that up, and I'll see if I can check that up for you.
In the
Real-time
meantime,
problem solving here.
Yeah, let me just open up the properties for this. So I guess we're not going to get to too many demos here. Maybe we'll get to the content automation one. Okay, so here we have tags, right? So what you can do is you can browse the tags that are part of your AEM implementation, right? So just pull one up here. So I'll just kind of similar to what I was doing here before. I'll set some there. Okay, so now I just added all those tags all at once, right? Maybe I wanted to add another one, which is something like landscape.
Right, but we in our instance of 6.5, that is not a capability that's set up. So,
The tag
or
picker,
maybe
really?
it's not available in 6.5. I don't know, but it doesn't work like that with us.
Okay.
Do you know what service pack you're at? Just so I can check the behavior against what I've got here.
I want to say 10.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't get that sort of type ahead capability there and add additional tags.
Not if we're clicking on the tag icon there. So we can, the type feature is available, but our users aren't sophisticated enough to be able to, pick out the specific tag from the taxonomy if it's if it's, in like the third subfolder down from the parent. So we haven't used that, the type, you said type over feature, so it basically picks it out from
type ahead.
Type ahead. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I just wondered if, if that's something that, we could have turned on and we haven't. I don't know.
Yep. So I think
we got some comments coming into the chat too. So Mark, check that out. There might be some, sounds like it might be where you have it enabled or not. I would say check out the chat real quick.
Gotcha.
Looks like
Thanks.
of other versions of the service packs that are lower than yours that might have that option.
Okay.
Cool. Then we have Diane. You get a question around tagging.
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So this might be a totally newbie kind of question because this is like my first time joining.
That's okay.
So
That's great.
So I kind of want to circle back to what you were working on with Chris when you selected the first 3 images.
Yeah.
Can you kind of quickly go over what is the difference between the field and the smart tagging? And the only reason why I kind of asked this is because I'm looking at this from like a content page creation. So for me, where I currently do is when we're creating pages, we use taxonomy and we tag, but I'm just kind of wondering, how does it play when you're doing a bulk selection and another selection? Like, how do they kind of work together? And is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, and you know what? I think that if you're working with something like a taxonomy, so you have your taxonomy and it's very well defined and it's already in AEM and that's something that you're working with, that's what you should probably work with because smart tags are something that just come as part of the Adobe Sensei. So when you're in AEM as a cloud service, that's just something that gets sort of added on. And you can teach it, you can train smart tagging to do better tags for you, but those are just the ones that are auto-generated. Think of it that way. Whereas the ones that are the tags are the ones that are defined by your taxonomy. So that's what you'd probably want to use.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to pull Diane. This is Greg. We're going to pull Diane into our smart tag modeling training pretty soon. We're the enterprise taxonomy is under Seismic right now, so we don't have an integrator yet there. We're working on it, or maybe Alfresco. I think not Seismic, but yeah, we're just starting to tag our assets right now, and we're working with content authors to actually. We're doing this on the test environment on stage, and then we're going to enable smart content service for different folders, go back periodically and manually add, promote, delete tags and things like that. So that's where we're at right now. But yeah, that was a good question, Diane. That's going to be happening next for us.
Okay, yeah, I kind of wonder because I mean we do it in Alfresco, but not so much, in this environment.
Awesome. Any other questions around tagging? All right, the next biggest one, and I'm not sure if they're all interrelated together, but we have bulk remove is the next biggest topic that is on the table.
Bulk remove. So like you want to delete an entire folder structure, or just remove a version, or tell me a little bit more about what that use case is.
You want to jump in with who added that in? Well,
Because it doesn't show up in here in a search result, or
Well, sounds like whatever that use case was, either the people aren't here because I know we got some people who are dropping. We're at the top of the hour, so I don't know how much more people are going to hang out. So that might be a follow-on type of thing. All right, I'll do one more just because it sounds like we have some other things in here. How about author training? So any tips and best practices around author training and how you get people used to using assets?
Well, we were just talking about it a little bit. Definitely make use of the taxonomy, right? Because once you've made use of the taxonomy, things have been tagged properly. Then you can see here that we have, a couple of different ways to sort of view that. Like, for example, here, this one's specifically going to look at orientation, right? So landscape. So show me everything that matches the landscape tag, for example. So here are the ones that are mentioned the landscape tag. So, it's a really good way to make sure that your content is showing up in things like search results, and you can find them easily for various authors, especially if you have a lot of content. So that's one of the things that I would recommend using. People don't seem to really make as much use of smart collections or collections in general. As I've seen, they're a really good way of making sure that you group content together, and then you can publish those out to Brand Portal as well. So you can make those collections available there. So one of the things that I was going to show here actually was we have this, this is Brand Portal. So this is typically a way that you would make content available to things like, either other agencies or partners, that kind of thing. And you can have collections built out here too, and have those shared out. So that's a pretty good way to sort of work with content is, making use of collections. So taxonomy, making use of collections. I think, if there's specific kinds of metadata that needs to be associated with content, make good use of schemas as well. So customize your schemas. You can also actually use metadata profiles so that when content gets uploaded into a folder, it will automatically have metadata set on it based on that metadata schema. So that's a pretty handy way to, make sure that content is tagged appropriately and attributes are set on your content.
Awesome. So Neha, you had your hand raised. You want to ask a question, or did you decide not to?
Yes, I do have a question. Hello, everyone. So this is regarding the assets. When I'm trying to upload one on the assets from the authoring dialog. So when you try to upload there and you're trying to search for a particular asset that you have already uploaded in DAM, why I'm not able to auto search, like, the search doesn't get complete. You have to write the entire name of the DAM asset that you have uploaded, then only it gets auto populated. But I mean, do we have that functionality right now into, like, in cloud? Because I'm on 6.5, but that auto search doesn't get completed.
Where would I want to try to do that? So like on a site page, then I'm
Yes,
looking
on a
for.
website page, let's say there's a template where there's a component, and in that it's an image component, for instance. And on that image component, you have this field where you have to enter the path for DAM, the DAM path that we entered.
Yep, let's see if we can try to replicate something like that.
Yep.
Let me go to sites. Let me go to weekend. Yep, thank you. To language masters and ventures. What's a good one here? Let's take this one. So give me a second here to get through this
Sure.
page.
Just as a note while you're pulling that up, so the instance that I had ready to go was an AEM 6.5.7 instance, and I was able to add multiple tags to a given image in the same property save session.
Okay,
so
so
browse.
yeah.
Oh, this is just uploading that there. So what you want to do is you want to browse the DAM.
Yep. So right now you have the drop and drag option, but we have customized it to have a field option, like a text field where you can enter the DAM path. So yeah, now let's say where you have the select path, are you able to find it via that image name, any particular image?
No, there's not really anywhere I can put in a name.
Oh, yeah.
So what I would have to do then for this, hang on a second, let me do this. What I would do for that is I have my assets here, right? So here I can open this up and just move this over, and here I can do something like put in a path, right? So I can either browse the path.
Yeah.
Okay. So now show me all the ones that are here, for example, and then I can find my file. I can even go further, right?
But let's say if you just put like this one, like this image here, you have edit -b. Instead of putting the entire path, if you just put edit -b, would that image get populated directly?
Let me see. I think I kind of have an idea what you're talking about. So here, I think if I put -b,
Yeah.
is that what you mean?
Yes. So any image name that has a -b should populate here. But currently that doesn't happen. So I was wondering, is it just 6.5 or is it with all the versions that we have for AEM?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it here either for AEM as a cloud service. So that could just be an AEM thing because
Yes.
it's
So now
not getting the full text.
yeah. Okay.
So dumb question. I'm the non-technical guy. What if we put an asterisk -b to give it a parameter of grab everything, right?
How about just that?
Yep. All right. Again, non-technical guy, but sometimes you have those asterisks gives you the kind of the wild card, right? So guess we're not that savvy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
just wanted to know, like, if this is yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So it looks like demos turned into authoring tips and
That's
tricks.
all right.
Yeah.
So Ronnie, you got a question?
That's great.
Yeah, so I posted this in the chat, and I think it's sort of related here, but feel free to pump me off for maybe to chat outside of this around this subject. But we are transitioning from the Widen platform. The Widen platform out of the box has many options for how you either connect to or share your assets. And they have a very intuitive way of achieving what they call an embed link, which is just a little snippet of code, and it directly links to that asset. With that, as a part of our transition, I haven't found that intuitive, the exact same functionality intuitively in AEM. The background there is that obviously we want to really champion this as a source of truth for everything, for as many of our outside partners as possible. Instead of downloading assets, let's link to assets so that they are updated when we update them. But I'm not finding, or at least maybe it's that I'm not using the right terminology because I'm too used to the Widen platform. But I'm wondering, how do we achieve a similar approach with AEM assets? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I understand. And there's a couple of different things to consider there, right? So first of all let me just go back into assets here.
And let me just give you one more little nugget.
Yeah.
Because we're using Asset Share Commons as a way for people to access these assets.
You do use it, okay, great.
So in an ideal scenario, as a part of those actions on the bottom where you download or you share, we would do a little custom script that would allow there to be an embed link that could be used as well for that asset. Now, I know that's not out of the box, but again, just kind of thinking in that direction, I'm just wondering, is there a way to achieve that with AEM?
Well, there's a couple of things. So there's link sharing, and there's a shared link. So this right here is where you can basically share it with an email address. So that sends an email out, which doesn't sound like it's the kind of scale that you're looking to do. But then the other thing that you can do is you can also publish this. So publishing this out to a published environment, right? Okay, yeah, so it's publishing the text too. So when you publish this out to a published environment, now that asset becomes available in an environment where if somebody just had the link to it, which all they would have to know is what that link is, then they can get to it, right? So in this case, it's just changing that to publish.
And of course, we, giving our users that specific of directions, there's all kinds of error, opportunity for error. So what I'm hoping to do is in the Asset Share Commons is, like I said, write a little script that grabs that, if we can do that, grabs that URL and just says, okay, here's your embed code, and make it very easy. That's the biggest thing, is we want to make it easy for users. And these users, by the way, are there are like dealers. So they sell our products. We sell our products to a dealer network. So like an auto dealer or that's a great example. Like a car dealer, they're just going to want to check out those assets from the corporation, the GM or the Fords or whatever, and use that information on their websites. And so that's what we're trying to create, is that ecosystem of where it's not a bunch of disconnected assets. They're actually all linked back to the corporate dam.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking about too is that if you wanted to make it a little bit more simple, you can also have sort of dynamic pages made available on a website. So not that the commons, as it's commons, but rather use like a simple web server, which then just builds out a listing of what those images are, and then next to it you can have what the embed HTML is that they need to pull, right? So they just give them a little copy button, and they just pull that, and they have a little thumbnail with a preview of it, and then they can just bring that right in. So it's a little bit more custom. AEM doesn't really do that out of the box.
Right.
But it's
Jonathan seems to have had a pretty elegant and simple solution there. You just paste it into the chat.
Yeah, that's kind of what we want to do, and basically just have someone write a little bit of code so that it's on the Asset Share Commons asset detail page, right? And that's one of the options you get. So it's achievable, and that's how you do it. Is you're wanting to get that publish URL. It's just writing, a little widget to capture that and to display it as a part of those options when you're on that asset detail page.
Yeah,
is that the right thinking?
Yeah, in our case, this is in our author instance, providing content authors sort of the ability to get either an embed code or publish URL. And it's actually sort of pre-built using ACS Commons. So it's Adobe's sort of extension library. So I don't know too much about the Asset Share Commons, but you might be able to leverage some of the work that was done there to at least see how it was built for authoring.
Yeah, it's similar. It's part of the GitHub repo as a part of that community. So, that at least gives me a little bit of a trail to go down. So I appreciate that.
There was one other thing I wanted to show. As long as I'm in this details page of this asset, one of the things that I did is I created a condition, a processing profile, which is part of AEM as a cloud service, which takes an image and converts it to black and white. And I did that with a Lightroom preset, actually. So anytime an image was uploaded to this particular directory, this weekend images, then it creates this black and white rendition. So you can see that there's a rendition automatically created. So great thing, right? So now you don't have to have somebody behind a desktop creating that black and white rendition, and exporting it and then providing that to you. Like, this automatically just does it and creates a rendition for you. So, and that's just one example. There's other filters, obviously, that you can do too. You can have Photoshop smart objects replacements. So you can have a T-shirt that gets brought up and always have it like in that particular section, have a particular logo, things of that nature. So it's pretty comprehensive. Okay, great questions, great topics. I like this a lot.
Yeah,
great.
We got about 15 minutes. We can dive into more AEM as a cloud service here, because we're already in it. So we can open up the floor there. We can jump in. I mean, we'll just use this as an open question session. So feel free to raise your hand. We'll jump in and see what we can answer. And again, if someone else in the community here has an answer, like we just saw with Jonathan kind of pointing out, like, let's do it. So otherwise, we can also wind down early. It just kind of depends on what you guys want to do. The floor, we got 15 minutes, unless we can use it as you guys want.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and while we do that, I just wanted to show one quick feature of AEM Essentials. I know that there wasn't quite as much interest in this as there was with others, but there is a neat feature in here I want to show a couple actually real quick. So one of the things is that you have the ability to obviously look at your tree structure here, right? When I do add assets, what I can do is, you can obviously bring files in there directly, but I can also browse to assets. So if I browse, I can browse files or folders. So here, what I can do is I can go into something like my photos area and go into folder, right, and say upload. Says, do you want to upload these 16 files? Yes. So it brings up that whole folder structure, which is kind of nice. I haven't played around with if there's limitations, if there's caps or anything like that, but it did let me via browser upload a folder structure. So go ahead and let that upload. It takes a little while, but because I have a lot of high-res images on my local workstation, but that was one neat feature that I just wanted to demonstrate there real quickly. See all those progressing there. So it basically creates a job for each folder. Okay, so that's done. The other thing I wanted to show here, I'll let that process in there because it's probably kicking off all those microservices. So if I go into any one of these here, okay, and then if I wanted to edit this, I wanted to just show real quickly that it loads this Photoshop Express editor, which is kind of nice too, right? So you can do different kinds of treatments, you can touch them up, you can do different things with brush sizes, you can adjust the image, so I can apply different kinds of filters in here too. So there's different kinds of color filters, there's vignetting that I can do. So lots of nice kind of Photoshop sorts of features that definitely are not part of AEM Assets or not part of AEM as a cloud service. It'd be great if they brought that in. Maybe that's on the roadmap at some point, but pretty nice editing capabilities here too that they have for this. Okay, were there other questions that we wanted to?
Nothing in the chat at the moment. Just so everyone saw, like there was a question around, will this recording be made available after? And the answer is yes. We're working with Adobe to make sure that this gets published into the AEM user group YouTube channel, and there's gonna be different, I guess, like different channels inside or playlists for all the different user groups. So when we get that published, we'll send a note out. But this recording will be made available for publicly afterwards.
Yeah. This is that Asset Share Commons that we were looking at a little bit earlier, or that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So it's basically a way, it's like a sort of shopping cart kind of way that people can consume content. So this is like a public site, and it's showing the assets that you've made available, and then people can go in there and look at the content, see some attributes, download it, share it, add to cart. So I'm assuming that this right here is where we would want to have a little section, which is like embed script or embed code or whatever they're looking to get out of that.
All right, Greg, you got your hand raised. The floor is yours.
Yep, thank you. I was going to ask, are we going to go back to what's the biggest challenge about AEM Assets, or do we talk about
the floor is yours, man. You got a challenge, let's rock and roll. Just something specific you want to try and address?
So I'm going through this exercise of training the tag model right now, and trying to work with content authors and train the smart content service. So I was just wondering, like, if others have done this, if they've turned on smart content service for their organizations, for their implementations, and then how it went. Because I know they have turned it on once here, and it didn't work out, so they turned off the smart content service because they were getting all these tags that were not necessarily matching to their enterprise taxonomy and things like that. So I was just curious to see how that worked for others, if they did that.
Jump in. Who's got experience with this? Anyone? Oh, Chris, you do?
Yeah, we had tried the smart tagging for a while, and we had to turn it off. There were way too many tags, and you saw how hard it was to remove them once they were there. So yeah, we just rely on a lot of manual, and we do have a database that we link to with our product. So it was easier for us to capture our images in retail. And so when we go out to capture the product, we've got the product information all tagged up with the shot. And when we bring it in, we rely on the image name to pair it up with all the product data, which makes it easier for us to manage than mistagging. Like we're getting men that were tagged as women, women as men, the race is incorrect. That would have been a mess, and we wouldn't be able to do anything down the road with personalization correctly.
Yeah, I've seen some strange things too with that.
Yeah. So was that after you manually trained the model? Like you provide like up to 5 tags for like 30 images, and then you were getting the wrong.
We
image.
tried it. And granted, we had done this probably a few years ago. This is pre-pandemic time. So we heard from the rep that it's much better now. So we're open to trying it again, possibly later this year.
Great. That's awesome. That's great feedback. We'll keep a close eye on that.
Yeah, these are close, but there's actually, it's train traffic, but it's not a highway. This is actually a train line. But the rest of them look sort of okay, I think. There's blur.
Yeah.
So
the way I describe it to content authors is like training a toddler to speak, essentially. It's like you're giving it a couple of very distinct visual aspects in the image, and then we're going to turn it on stage and try to see how it works for, just enable it in a couple of folders and see what kind of percentage report we're getting back from the Smart Content Service. And then I'll go back to the librarians and the content authors and kind of go through that exercise to see how it works for us. And then we're going to turn it on in publishing if it works.
You know, one thing that's interesting too, that I'll point out about Assets Essentials. Okay, so let me just open this one up again. So you see the information here, you see the tags. See how they have percentages next to them? This is a little bit different than what's in AEM Assets as a cloud service. So I'm thinking that this percentage means that, you know, does it match based on other tags that have been set for this particular system or this implementation? So that's a pretty interesting thing that I've seen here too. So I wonder if this right here is something that they're going to be bringing into AEM as a cloud service, because you know that to me seems like useful information. Maybe
confidence level. Like we're 52% confident this is a red item. Like so.
When you set up the smart tags, you can set that in there, and it was still a bit off for us. So we played with the confidence level.
Yeah, right. This is something that now I feel like I need to research a lot, because if you wanted to use smart tags but constrain it to an enterprise taxonomy vocabulary to only say you can only pick out of the approved taxonomy. Right. You can auto tag it with anything in there, but these are the words you get. Then it'd be nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, and you know the usual setup is that you can have something like and I'm switching between browsers because one's an Adobe ID and one's an enterprise ID. Anyway, when you go into smart tag training, I have one set up here, landscape sunsets, right? So I can edit this guy, and then you can choose from these are just out of the box tags, but you can set up tags that are specific to a particular taxonomy and say, when I have these images, make sure that like here in this case, like season spring, when I have these images in here, this is where you tell it that I want it to match that particular tag to just improve that training for that AI element of it. So that's kind of how that works.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Would love to see if anyone else in the user group has been using smart tags and how their training went.
Go ahead and jump in. Anyone's using them? All right, silence. I think we're about ready to start losing some people as we're getting to the bottom of the hour. So I'm gonna drop one more quick poll in, and this is just gonna hopefully help us with future topics. So this has been a great one about assets, and I love all the information that we've been sharing and the questions. But we want to make sure we're also addressing other things you guys are interested in. So I'm going to ask if you can drop some future topics in here. If you're interested in presenting on any of these, again, we're not the only ones that need to be talking about this stuff. We're great to facilitate it, but we don't need to be the only ones up here. So, workflow is great, headless. If you have experience and you want to showcase some of this stuff, drop Tad, myself, or Ralph a line. We can be on LinkedIn. We're happy to kind of share our information, contact information as well. But we're happy to facilitate. But if you want to be the one kind of showcasing what you're doing cool at your organization, this is all on the table. So. We'll let you guys kind of answer some of these. This is great. I love that we're getting some topics here. This is fantastic. I'm going to quickly just throw a quick box on this one thing, and then all right, as you guys do that, I'm just going to quickly share our contact information with you guys in case. So if you guys want to present or are interested in being part of the presenting crew, you can go ahead and drop us a line here. Fred.Faulkner@icfnext.com or Ralph.Winterpock@icfnext.com or Tad.Reeves@icfnext.com. Again, we're just the leaders of the group. We'd love to have others come up here and be front and center, showcasing what you guys have going on in your organization, some of the cool things if you're using open resource stuff or open, stuff from GitHub or other, common libraries. It'd be great to have you guys present as well. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up tonight's session. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate you guys jumping in, being part of it. This is a great one tonight, and looking forward to getting the next one set up and bringing you guys all up on stage.
Thanks, guys. It's been awesome.
Right,
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks all. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Stop.